Is that yes? Good evening. This is Monday, April 18th, 2022. Thank you for being here this evening for our City Council meeting. We'll start with a regular call to order, and then we'll go to our invocation and pledge. Councilmember Smith will lead us in those two right now.
If you would bow your heads and pray, if you so desire. Oh, Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to see another day and be here just in your presence, oh Father God. I pray that we can have a good meeting, that we can do the work for our community, and that we just continue to put their needs ahead of anything else, oh Father God. God, I pray that we all had a wonderful weekend celebrating Easter Sunday, and I pray that we just continue to do the work that the Lord has provided us with the strength to continue to do, and that we leave this meeting with care and concern for each and every one of ourselves and each other, as well as our constituents. I ask for these blessings in your precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and thank you for also happy belated Easter. Should have mentioned that right off, so thank you very much. Next, we'll do our proclamations that we have. We have two very good ones this evening. So the first I'll read is the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, which is April 10th through the 16th, obviously last week. But whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of our police officers, our firefighters, our paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. Whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and the accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the City of Clemson Emergency Communications Center. Whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. Whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and by monitoring their activities by radio and providing them information and ensuring their safety. Whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Clemson Police Department has contributed to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. Whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now, therefore, I, Robert Halfaker, Mayor of the City of Clemson, do hereby proclaim the week of April 10th through 16th of last week, 2022, as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, in honor of these men and women who diligently and professionally keep our city and citizens safe. In witness whereof, I hereby set my hand and cause the great seal of the city to be affixed this 18th day of April 2022. We would have obviously read that earlier, but we didn't have a city council meeting last week, obviously. So, next proclamation is Jury Appreciation Week, which is later on. It'll be actually the 1st of May. It's May 2nd through May 6th. Whereas the right to a trial by jury is one of the core values of American citizenship. Whereas the obligation and privilege to serve as a juror are fundamental to our democracy as the right to vote. Whereas our court depends upon citizens to serve as jurors, whereas service by citizens as jurors is critical to the judicial system. Whereas all citizens should be encouraged to respond when summoned by jury service. Whereas continuing an imperative goal for the courts, the bar, and the broader community is to ensure that jury selection and jury service are fair, effective, and not unduly burdensome on anyone. Whereas one of the most significant actions as a court system could take is to show appreciation for the jury system and for the tens of hundreds of thousands of citizens who annually give their time and talents to serve on juries. Now, therefore, I, Robert Halfaker, Mayor of the City of Clemson, do hereby proclaim the week of May 2nd through 6th, 2022 as Jury Appreciation Week, signifying the City of Clemson's commitment to educating the public about jury duty and the importance of jury service, applauding the efforts of our jurors who fulfill their civic duty, ensuring that the responsibility of jury service is shared fairly by supporting employees who are called upon to serve as jurors, ensuring that the responsibility of jury service is shared fairly among citizens and that a fair cross-section of the community is called for jury service, providing jurors with tools that will assist their decision-making, and continuing to improve the jury system by encouraging productive dialogue between jurors and court officials. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the great seal of the city affix this 18th day of April 2022. Chief, you want to say anything? I'm looking right at you.
Just real quickly, I want to emphasize our telecommunicators and the job that they do, and then are definitely not recognized enough for what they do. Just in our community alone, we talk about the need for law enforcement to have training and skills and resources available to them to deal with the mentally ill, but our telecommunicators deal with the mentally ill as well on the phone. We have an individual who has come on up here. Jamie Ayers is one of our telecommunicators, and she's here representing them. How many times did the one person call over the last 6 months, do you think?
Before 10 a.m., 200 times.
Okay, in a day. And they're the ones that deal with them. Also, we have another individual who has mental illness and will talk very lengthy on the phone, and they keep us from having to go to their residences. So those are just small examples of some of the stuff they do every single day. And we're hiring. We have some openings. So Jamie is here representing them, and I just appreciate everything she and all of our telecommunicators do for us. So thank you.
You want to take a quick picture?
Sure.
Let's do that. All right. Jamie, you get to be in the middle. Next item is public session, and I will turn it over to Councilmember Smith again. You get to do it today.
All right. This is our opportunity to hear from our citizens. If you'd like to say anything today, speak to council that is not on the agenda, so anything that's not in our policy action agenda or policy items, you're more than welcome to come up at this moment. We ask that you speak for 3 minutes. We give you 3 minutes to share your thoughts, and we ask that you sign in and also state your name and your address for the record. If you are listening, you can call in. The number is 653-9886, and you follow the instructions, and also you still have the 3 minutes limit in order to provide your comments. Anyone like to come up and speak? Well, Mayor, that would mean no one wants to come up and speak at this time, so we will close public session.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you running that. Next is the approval of minutes, April 4th, 2022. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
All right. Any further discussion, comments? All in favor, raise your right
I
hand.
have a comment. If you go to the second page, it says that that vote in opposition to the amended motion was council members Duckworth and Smith, and that it was actually because Fran had did an amended. It's on the second page for me, and it's vote in favor of the amended motion was Councilmember McGuire, Smith, and Watt for the RFQ. Because, Fran had made a amendment to remove the 1,200 and 2,000 beds. And then it says voted in opposition was Mayor Halfaker, and Councilmembers Brookover, Duckworth, and Smith, and that should be 4.
That's on page 3.
There's 30, like line 7.
Further down.
The 7th line.
There we go.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, with that change, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right. Next, we'll go into reports, discussion, and agenda items. Chief, you get to come up. We're excited to have you. We're going to show the annual report for the Clemson Fire Department. Welcome, City Council. Welcome to the community about 6 months later. Actually, longer than that now, actually. How long has it been, actually?
A year since
You
I've been
see,
in
it
town.
goes by so quick. See?
And nobody noticed.
No, well, the one thing about it is, the cool thing is that Chief and I worked in the same area in Bluffton, South Carolina, so we had common connections after I heard he was hired, so I got a chance to reach out, so it was great to have you a year later here in the community.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me tonight, Mr. Mayor and Council. I do apologize that it's taken a year to get here. It wasn't my intention, but a year went by really, really fast. And then also, we have been working with Andy and his staff on the contract, so it kind of made sense that as we're going into the contract, time to come and do this presentation. So I'm here tonight on behalf of the fire department to offer up our 2021 year in review. But before I get into that, I would just like to take a quick second, and not to belabor my presentation today, I know we're on limited time, but I would like to thank Andy and his staff in cooperation with myself and my staff and the folks at Clemson University for the hard work that's gone into the contract that's before you for your review, I believe, tonight. So it's been a lot of work, and I appreciate Andy's work on that, working together with the university. I'd also like to take a second to thank Brian Johnson, your city fire marshal. Brian does a great job. He's out there day in and day out performing a lot of fire inspections out in the city, working with us on collaborative efforts, looking at plan reviews and things like that, and Brian's doing a great job, so I just wanted to bring that before you as well. And also Chief Campos. The partnerships that we have with the city and working day in and day out with fire police out in the streets, we couldn't do our job without these guys and his staff, so thank you, Chief. Appreciate all your support out there. On the screens before you, just have put together a little presentation, so I'd like to take you through that. Again, it's supposed to be a year review, but I also wanted to kind of take you through just a few things, maybe some educational pieces to let you kind of know where we are as a fire department and how we're servicing the city. So if we go to the next slide. Simply just a quick map showing you how we have our call district broken up. So the pink and the blue, that is the city. So that is the areas that we respond to in the city. The inside piece is the actual campus, the core part of campus. There you go. So we basically have our district broken into 3 sections. We have campus, then we have the pink section, which is the area that's responded to first due by the station that's on campus. So the perimeter road station responds to that pink area. And then the area that's in the light blue is the area that's covered primarily first due by our station number 2, which is off of Issaquena Trail. This next piece that I want to bring before you again is just an educational piece, and I'll just kind of, we'll start the video. It's about 2.5 minutes long, and if you'll just bear with the video, I think it's very educational, and it'll give you some kind of clear direction as to where we're headed as a fire department in terms of growth and the level of service that we want to bring to the citizens of Clemson. So if you'll play this video, we'll yeah, there is sound. Sorry about that. There's sound attached.
firefighter doing every job that needs to be done to save you and your house. And at a fire, there's a lot that needs to be done, like stretching a hose, hooking to a hydrant, searching for trapped people, venting the hot gases, and much more. For a low-hazard single-family house fire, NFPA 1710 specifies a minimum of 15 firefighters dispatched in the initial alarm. At an open-air strip shopping center or garden apartment fire, the standard specifies a minimum of 28 firefighters dispatched in the first alarm. And for fires in high-rise buildings at least 7 stories tall, the data show that the initial dispatch should be for a minimum of 43 firefighters. And that fire department should send additional firefighters to situations that are beyond the capability of the initial alarm. Regardless of the type of property, 1710 also sets the time of arrival on scene within 4 minutes for the first engine with 4 firefighters. The 1710 standard for both response time and crew size is based on scientific evidence, not opinion. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, known as NIST, and its partners conducted extensive research to document the optimal crew sizes for various types of structures. As a decision maker, you and firefighters share a common goal. Everyone gets out alive. So when a house is on fire, just remember it takes a minimum of 15 firefighters to put it out. And the quicker the response time, the better the outcome for everyone. For more information, talk to your local firefighters. Thanks for listening, and stay safe.
So again, just wanted to provide that video, quick video, for some context of kind of where we're headed with the Clemson University Fire Department. We think it's important to be able to provide a certain level of service for the campus as well as the city. And the contract that's coming before you for your review and your vote kind of lays out the growth that we're trying to accomplish at the fire department. So quickly here on the slides in front of you, just a quick layout of how we're currently staffed. So this first slide is our administrative staff. Currently we have 2 command officer positions. That's myself, and I have the deputy chief. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the deputy chief, Bill Shiver, has been serving in this community for 35 years, and he's retiring next week. So I have to just offer him a round of applause because he's done a great job serving this community for a very long time. So we're on the hunt for a new deputy chief, and I'm in that process right now. We also have 2 folks in our fire marshal's office. That's our fire marshal, and he has an inspector that helps inspect all the properties that are on campus as well as our facilities around the state. Clemson owns a lot of property, as you might know. We have a training officer, and that's a new position that we were authorized this past January. First time in the history of this organization that they actually had somebody responsible for the day-to-day training of firefighters. Huge, much needed, and excited to have that position. That was an internal hire. We also have a community risk reduction officer / public education / data analyst, and she happens to be in the room with me. This is Sergeant Jennifer Thaxton. She takes care of that for us. I also have a logistics and maintenance officer, and that individual is responsible for all of the maintenance on our fire trucks, our fire stations, ordering supplies. There's a huge job in front of him, and that's Chad Teskey. And we also have an administrative assistant part-time currently, and I've putting in for a full-time admin assistant because we truly need it. Taking a quick look at how our shifts are broken down. So you've just seen the video. It says that we should have a minimum of 15 firefighters on any single-family residential structure fire, not to mention strip malls and high-rise. Currently, we have 13 firefighters assigned to each shift. All right, so we're a little bit below that minimum, but we're headed toward trying to get 15. The way that's broken down is we have a captain that runs the shift, and they run out of our headquarters station. We have a lieutenant assigned out at Station 2. We have 2 sergeants, one in each one of those stations, and we have firefighters that are equally divided among those 2 stations for extra staffing. We have 3 shifts, so we run a 24-hour shift, and then they get 48 hours off while those other 2 shifts are working. All right, if you look over on the right-hand side, sorry. quick breakdown on our projected growth. So currently, right now, we have been approved by the university to go ahead and hire that 14th firefighter per shift as of July 1 of this year, so that's coming. That's going to be adding a second lieutenant to each shift, so we'll have a lieutenant in each one of the firehouses. And we're going to take that captain and roll that captain into more of a supervisory role. There'll be an independent response, so they can actually roam through the district and supervise each one of those stations. And then we're headed to 15 per shift the following year. That's our projected growth right there. Just also want to make you aware that we've also applied for a federal grant through a grant called SAFER Grant, which stands for Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. And if we're fortunate enough to get that grant, again, it's not a guarantee, but that will definitely help us offset some of the funding for those positions. So very proactive in writing the grants and things like that to help us with finance. This slide basically just shows you our projected budget. Top line is the CUFD budget projections going through the next 5 years starting. So right now, this coming year, we're looking at $4.7 million budget. Next year at 4.9, jumping up into the next year at 6 million, 6.4, and then it comes back down. The reason that 1 year goes a little higher is because we have some anticipated projection cost of like apparatus where we buy a truck. It's going to obviously cost us more money. The bottom line is the proposed city contract contribution through the contract and then how that relates to our budget each year. Very happy with the way this proposal has come together, and I think that will definitely help us as we go forward. So quick look back in 21 as our calls came in. So you'll see there in 2021, we ran 360 EMS emergencies inside the city. We ran 421 fire emergencies for a total of 781 calls. We ran 1,699 total calls for a percentage of the calls running in the city was around 46%. I would like to point out, though, those EMS calls in the city, keep in mind, Pickens County is responsible for EMS in the city. So 360 times we were called for assistance by Pickens County to come in and help, in which we don't mind because we're serving the citizens of Clemson. Just thought it was important to bring those facts and figures out. Any questions on our calls?
So you alluded to the fact that the EMS cost goes through the county. Mm-hmm. Is that the preferred way that things are done, or is that?
Yes, ma'am. That's
okay. I just want to make sure you.
No, under county ordinance, the Pickens County is responsible for all medical calls inside the city of Clemson.
Is that normal across the rest of the state? Was sort of my question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's
Of the 360 where you guys were called in for assistance, was that because they couldn't respond in time, or because they actually needed a backup?
in most cases because they didn't have a unit available.
Okay.
And their next closest unit was too far, so they would call us to ask us if we have someone available to respond to the call. Okay. And we have to make a decision based on our current staffing, our current position of our ambulances and where they are. And in that case, 360 times we said yes, and we responded.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Next chart just gives an illustration of the growth pattern. So this runs from 2010 to 2021. Clemson City is that orange line, so you can just see that steady growth of call volume through the city over the last number of years. I just think that illustrates just how the demand for our services are going in the city. Similar chart just shows that in 2021, 46% of our calls were calls of service from the city in terms of total call volume. This is a breakdown of all the incidents. I apologize for the size of that. I hope you can see that. But so by call type, there you go. The city on the left-hand column, and there you go. So we ran 35 fire responses in the city, 360. There's those medical emergencies, 23 hazardous conditions, 101 service calls, which could be like a beeping smoke alarm or a general service call. We have that good intent call. A good intent call is what we classify as lift and assist. Somebody's fallen, they need assistance getting back up. They can't get back into bed on their own or to a chair, so we go out to help there. And we ran 166 false alarms, so that's going to be your commercial fire alarms that go off for one reason or another, whether it's faulty system or whatever the case may be, but that's our false alarms. And that's, again, 781 total calls in the city. If you'll think back to that video, we talked about, trying to get that fire truck on the scene within 4 minutes. It's important to try to get it within 4 minutes. So what you're being presented with there is, so the City of Clemson 9-2, that's going to be our Station 2, and City of Clemson 9-1 is going to be our station off the campus. And in 2021, we had an average of our first due arriving within 5 minutes and 16 seconds at Station 2 and 5:39 at Station 1. That average, if you look across the country, is really, really good. Where I came from, my former department, we were somewhere between 6.5 to 7 minutes, depending on the jurisdiction that we were responding to. So very pleased with that number. Can we make that number a little bit better? Sure, absolutely. We're going to try to do our best to continue to bring that number lower. But 516 is pretty good. That's an average. This slide just basically shows so I'll take all the calls that we responded to in the city for fire, where there was a piece of property that had impending danger. So in 2021, those property values added up to $6,264,900. The losses, which means the amount of property that we lost, was $339,975. So we saved $5,924,000. So we have a very, very small property loss value, which I think is a testament to the individuals that respond out and the job that they do on a daily basis. Just wanted to provide with you some capital projects that we have in the future for the fire department. Some big ticket items that we're looking at. In a couple of years, we're going to have to replace our air packs, and those air packs aren't cheap, so we're looking at spending about $600,000 to replace those, to bring those up to current standard. Also, we're trying to put all of our firefighters in a second set of turnout gear. So cancer in the fire service is a really big issue. It has been for a number of years now. So one of the cancer prevention techniques is to ensure that every firefighter has a second set of gear. So if we go to a fire in the morning, we can come back to the station, take that gear and wash it. While we're washing it, we have a second set of gear to put on, so that if they go to another call, they're not putting contaminated gear back on their body. So in order to do that, we're going to need to spend some money. I have a grant in for right now for about $125,000. I'm fingers crossed that we're going to get that grant. But if not, then we're going to have to come up with the funds to do that. And again, it's just with those cancer prevention initiatives. We have some vehicles to purchase. Again, I got a training lieutenant that I need to put into a vehicle so he can venture around the district to get the training done. And then, of course, we're looking at proposed in the city contract. If that gets approved, that we'll be buying a new pumper, and that's about $675,000. So, any questions? I know that's a lot of information.
So do you have any sense about how many of your off-campus calls are student-related, student housing, student EMS, compared to non-student residents?
I cannot answer that question right now. That is some data that we may be able to pull. We're big into tracking our data, but to have that answer for you this evening, I do not. But I could definitely get back with you on that if we can pull that information.
If you can.
Okay.
Other comments, questions?
Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
A lot of
Absolutely.
kudos.
It's our
Thank you.
pleasure.
And I was in class with Jennifer, so I know she does a wonderful job. Did a presentation together.
Yes.
Chief, we appreciate the partnership. We look forward to working together for many years.
Absolutely.
Thank you for looking at the 5-year commitment too. That means a lot.
It's our pleasure, and I'll get back sooner next year for this report.
Oh no, when I said that, you're a busy guy. So that's what, I knew that. So we know how busy you've been. So we appreciate everything you're doing, your engagement with the community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yep.
Thanks for being here. Thank you both. All right. Next is to discuss the downtown streetscape and possible removal of 2 kiosks located on College Avenue. Lindsay. That was very quiet.
I attached the pictures to the agenda item request so that I could refresh your minds on what kiosk I'm talking about. This specific kiosk right here in front of the old Wells Fargo building is going to come down whether you give permission for it or not because of construction that is going to be happening at the building behind it. So in discussing this with Nathan, our city engineer, we talked about the kiosk that's in front of the substation on down further and how we are trying to have entertainment and do stuff downtown to keep it on the little plaza there. So I am asking if I can take the other kiosk down too, and preferably I would like to do that before our first on the Ave event, which is May 17th. Cody's really looking forward to tearing that out. And then when they come down, I know that, I don't know, I'm not going to go into it, but we've been having some meetings with various departments and council members about doing a downtown refresh, kind of a stopgap between the major overhaul for the downtown corridor to do something a little bit more than what we've been doing. So refreshing this area is part of that. The only reason why I've come and pulled this out from an overall plan that I'm sure we will be presenting to you in the near future is to possibly get that down before we have our On the Ave events. With the refresh though, we may very well bring the kiosks back for the purpose that they serve, which is right now one side has every park, one side has a restaurant listing, and then 2 sides are events. It's updated 4 times a year, so sometimes the information is out of date before it even goes into the kiosk. If something changes, we don't have that real-time capability to keep things fresh and moving, which is what we would look to do to replace these in the future. So that's really just, I'm just going to tear some stuff down.
So is this just a formality? Because is this a cost issue?
No, it's not a cost issue, it's just a big streetscape element,
Oh,
it's
okay.
part of a big
So we have
plan.
to vote on
We
it?
didn't want to just administratively.
Yeah, I wanted to just
Take
put them
them out,
down, and
but-
he said I had to come ask y'all.
Iron Fist needs to knock it down too.
So let me just make sure, Lindsay, just to make sure if everybody's in agreement, May 5th is enough time? Because,
May 17th is the first one.
yeah, but we're discussing it tonight. We do
I don't think
actually.
we actually have
This
to vote on
doesn't
it,
have-
as long
I
as
think-
those are con-
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
that's subjective.
That's all I want to make sure.
Administrative.
If everybody.
I feel like unless there's really some major
Good.
concern
That-
about it, that
that
y'all
helps
can give
me.
me
And I think it's
permission.
a no-brainer. I mean, they're doing a great job on the kind of plan you present, what we're pulling together. These are gone. Whatever comes back needs to be digital, sleek, kind of more in keeping with where we are, so.
All right, so no objections, moving to the next item. Sorry, but unless somebody says otherwise. All right, good.
Get your little mini.
There you go. Thumbs up.
Okay.
Thumbs
I'll
up.
take
Because normally
that.
we just discuss
Ask
it.
permission.
I might have one later.
So the next will be football park.
Football parking. So the end of last year, Robert and I had a very brief conversation about the football parking and how much people pay to lease for the season. Currently, it is $150 for in-town residents. It is $200 for out-of-town residents. And the last time we raised this was in 2017. It went from 100 and 150 to 150 to 200, and that was in 2017. I am asking for us to raise the out-of-town rate to $250, leaving the in-town rate at $150. If we raise the out-of-town rate to $250, that averages out to $35.71 per game. It's just for the 7 home games. It's not the spring game. It's not any other graduation or anything like that. It's flat 7 home football games. I know that the $35.71 is actually probably still on the lower bar of what you're going to pay if you get a space from a private seller of a football parking space around town. So, that is, I'm bringing that for discussion this evening. If you have any questions or,
You will have to vote on that one.
yes, I will have to come back.
That's a deal, I mean,
Why would we charge less and when we're competing against private organizations that do that? Why wouldn't we charge about the same or a little bit more?
Well, I feel that raising it by $50 at one time is fair. I think to hit harder than that would be a lot.
do you know that how much churches charge?
No, I do not.
More than that. Considerably more.
Well, then I'm open to suggestions.
No, I just,
I mean, I really do think we ought to be in line instead of providing a less expensive, publicly subsidized option for people when it is a choice to come to a football game and that kind of stuff. I don't think we should be.
do you know whether we turn people away?
Oh, we've got a wait list. Yeah, we have a wait list.
Okay.
Just a wait list. My suggestion would be maybe to tier it over, like, to incrementally do it over
Rip
3
the
years.
Band-Aid off.
I'm just saying.
There is one difference, I think, and I could be wrong because I don't know what people are doing in the church parking lots, but they can't tailgate in our parking spots.
Yes, they can.
Right?
They can tell.
Oh, they can
They
tailgate.
cannot have open flame,
can't
but
cook.
they can tow.
That's
They
right.
can't cook, but they can tailgate.
I think the only difference is
They have-
that most of the
They
churches,
have open alcohol?
Churches provide public restrooms.
right, the churches allow for the restrooms.
So Lindsay,
Only for football.
that we were just talking about, and John was just saying the difference would be the restroom aspect for churches and not
Right.
private.
That's a big difference, there's no doubt, but I mean, I know that the charges, the closer you get to campus, obviously, the more, but you're competing with the Lutheran church, and the Lutheran church charges more.
If it was $40 a game, or 50, so
At the end of the day, it doesn't, like, if we raised it by $1,000, this isn't going to make or break the city, this piece of revenue. So, I mean, I don't know, understand why we'd be nervous about something with, again, 7 days a year football.
Personally, it's not going to make or break the budget, so why be nervous about providing an opportunity?
I'm saying,
Yeah,
well,
let's
we
get
should be
started.
maximizing it, is what I'm saying. This is a perfect example of this is 100% a choice of what people do on those days and not.
So what's the breakdown between resident usage and out-of-town usage?
So to look at what we had in 2021,
Right.
that's what I can go by because we'll send out renewals and it'll rotate around. But what we have 259 spaces that are available for football. Currently, only 49 of those are in town.
That's what I figured.
The
So
rest
how
of
do
them
you
are out of
monitor, I mean, you have somebody like, we have to have an officer or somebody there to let people in, or employees?
Yes, two. We have to have one at the Finley deck and we have to have one.
So those are officers, or are they just employees?
Well, it used to be an officer. Now it is an employee that volunteers. I mean, manning those decks has proven to be a little difficult. But yes, it has to be controlled access.
So the demand for these spaces greatly exceeds the supply, if I heard you right.
Right.
Right. So I guess I would
COVID was
feel-
kind of a reset. Before going into COVID, I personally don't let the wait list get over 60 names because you're about 5 seasons out before the 60th name on the list is going to get a space because we only rotate about 10 spaces a year. COVID was a reset. We had people that didn't renew. We had people that came off the wait list. So right now we only have about 17 to 20 names on the wait
But it
list.
could be more. if you-
Yes,
if you-
and as we get closer to football season, the phone will start ringing and people.
So I guess I would be very comfortable raising it as high as possible for the out-of-city people. I think some benefit to being in the city might be not quite as dramatically, but it's a relatively small number of in-city people then that are using the spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go crazy, but I think we need to go up more than,
John, what's the Lutheran church? Do you know offhand?
I think the Lutheran churches, I've been pushing Josh to go up there, because the Episcopal church charges $500.
Whoa.
And I mean, of course, now it's the closest to camp.
Well,
Yeah, I realize that, but not that much less than the Lutheran. I think the Lutheran church is charging $300. And I've been pushing him to really go up. The Presbyterian church charges $200. I don't know what the Baptist, any Baptist? You, John, you don't
charges.
know? Well, I guess not, because truthfully, y'all park in that parking garage.
Yeah, small area discount. Well, there's a little lot there. They do a lot of discounts.
But anyway, I mean, you said 150 for the residents, and then how much for the other two? 250.
Just, yeah.
So the average in the average is about $40 per game.
I feel like
So
it
then
is.
you could
280.
do 280.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. That would be around that'd be $40 per game.
Well, if
That'd
you
be-
do 280, might as well just go with 300. Keep it even.
Okay.
And then it would be a double. It would be a 150 to a 300
There you
ratio.
go.
And
Okay.
that's what
That's where I was headed with that.
our registration fees are like that.
For
So.
when it comes back, everybody kind of, okay.
Okay, so the recommendation is 300, and so when, all right,
Thank you, Lindsay.
thank you.
Next, y'all been very patient, and y'all got here at 6 o'clock, very early too, so I love it. We received a report from Clemson University, Professor Gaines' class, and future suggestions and thoughts on 12 Mile. We're excited to hear it. So, Tony, you gonna lead it off? I knew you would. That's awesome. Full class.
This past fall, we had the pleasure of hosting Professor Gaines and his students at 12 Mile Park to work on concepts for re-envisioning the landing and beach area as a city park, an actual city park. This was a fun, insightful project to be a part of and observe. The final product was very impressive. The presentations were really good. So I think you guys will enjoy as well. If you don't know Professor Gaines, he worked for 38 years with the South Carolina State Park System as a ranger, as a park superintendent, and 13 years as park director. After retirement, he spent the past 4 years as a professor at Clemson University. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him talk more about the project.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good to be here. Special thank you to these students because we've done this class, so there's nothing in it for them, except for maybe pizza afterwards if they do it. So thank them for being here. We did have a lot of fun, and we'll go right into the presentation and tell you a little bit about our methods. So our first method was, I like to tell the students, so start at the beginning. So the beginning is, what is the mission? What does the city want with this piece of property? And what is the mission of the city for their park and recreation program and their parks and the long-term desired results for this piece of property? So we looked at that, and then we really talked about developing a sense of place for this special piece of property. And one of the advantages of it is it sits on Lake Carl. One of the challenges was that it's a Corps of Engineers property, and it looks like a Corps of Engineers property, like every Corps of Engineer property in the Southeast. And so the challenge was that how do you develop this sense of place for this special piece of property for this community? And then the last thing I gave them was to be bold. And you're not going to change what a Corps of Engineers property looks like without being bold and looking at big picture stuff. So here's where we started. It's really hard to see some of those things, but the bottom line was to identify the assets, identify the issues, and look for those opportunities, and get buy-in from stakeholders and kind of talk to what the community wanted to do, and then develop this vision. But we started out with doing an inventory of what the resources were, what makes this place very special, and then some challenges. And we hit both of those and then went through this process. So Maggie Brewer is going to kind of run us through this. Maggie is a senior who will be graduating in August. And thanks, Maggie, for taking the lead on this.
Yeah, thank you guys. You can head to the next slide. So just to go over what we'll go over, we'll first talk about the non-negotiables, so the things that you've got to do to have people in this park safely and to be able to manage it well. And then we'll talk about how the process of creating identity as a City of Clemson park rather than an Army Corps of Engineers site, and then our vision of what people could do in the future out at this site. So first things first, some safety and compliance. This could be anything from ADA all the way down to like playground safety. You can head to the next slide. So here you can see some examples of some ADA issues. The first picture is a parking space, and then the second is if you're standing at that picnic shelter looking up at the space, there's no way that you would get up and down from there. So just examples like that of ADA compliance that needs to just be gone through and updated. And then refuse management, so trash cans. On the site, there's something like 76 trash cans on the park. So from management's perspective, take some of those off, create some more centralized locations for trash so that they can go through there and maintain a lot easier and just reduce the litter from it falling all around the trash cans. And then soil erosion and compaction, the grouping off to the left there, you can see along the sidewalks, the soil is just like running off anytime it rains, creating a lot of ditches throughout the parks. And then in any high use area, the soil is very compact, as you can see out on the pictures of the peninsulas. And it's actually starting to cause some of the trees out there to die up at the top. And so we'll talk about later what we can do to reduce that, but that's something we'll look at. And then off to the right, the playgrounds, just like ADA, we'll just need to go through and see if they're up to code. We know for a fact that like you're gonna have to put mulch or like some kind of rubber bedding underneath both of the structures out by the beach and also up near the back of the park. So then talking about how we thought about building Clemson identity at the park. Since it was an Army Corps of Engineers site, it's that cookie cutter. You can go anywhere across the country and you're going to see like the same structures and same layout. And so we looked at Clemson and identified a couple of the key values that we'd like to see at the park. And those include progressing towards inclusion and equity at 12 Mile through the ADA, engaging community members any kind of way that we can bring them into the park, and then fostering environmental sustainability, so with the soil compaction and erosion out there. But we can start this through some simple steps. For example, bringing in just City of Clemson branded signage, just to make it look like the other parks so that people driving by know that is part of their city and they're welcome there. And then the ADA compliance again, and then targeting people for different activities or ways that they can engage with the park out there, no matter what their stage of life is. So the next couple slides are our vision, which is just a compilation of all the class presentations, some of the highlights we thought that were presented of what you could do at the site one day. And so our favorite part of the park was this peninsula, just because it looks out, the sunset happens right out there, and it's just a really cool area. But we would like, if you look at it, you can see there's like a lot of picnic tables and trash cans and just like raised beds out there. That makes the space kind of feel disjointed and is creating a lot of erosion. So if you pulled some of those away and let the space just kind of grow back naturally, you'd preserve like the shaded aspect out there so that it wasn't just like a dirt patch that sticks out into the lake one day. If you'll click forward, and you can click one more time. That's kind of a photoshopped image of like what it could look like if you took some of the structures out. You can move on. And then like Mr. Phil said, being bold. So these next ones are just ideas that we thought of that could be included out there. So these images are just of structures that you could put out there to encourage communities, members to come out and gather. Anything from like a pavilion, amphitheater, anywhere out along the lake there. A trail system or just a walking path. The park goes out and it has a loop, a road that goes around, but that upper acreage inside of it isn't really touched. So you could put a walking path out there to give people another activity to go to the park for, but to also reduce some of the crowding out on the beach by drawing people up to that upper acreage. You could do day use, kayaks, paddleboards, canoes, anything to encourage people to get out on the lake. We thought this would be really special for City of Clemson residents that don't have as much access to Hartwell as maybe the university properties. And then really just any other variants of gathering spaces to encourage people to come out and spend time together. And at the site, this could be anything from a fishing dock, like a walkway out over the lake, little areas for kids to play, any variation of those. The next slide is another example, just like little areas for hammocks and just any kind of fun things that could boost Clemson's outdoor activities. But I'll hand it back over to Richard Bell.
So again, to kind of bring it all back, is there's some very special places out there. The one that we talked about a lot was that peninsula, and it's sometimes to do more, you have to do less, and so like it's so crowded there that you kind of get lost of how special that place is. And so if you could kind of look at it differently than you've ever looked at it before, especially not this cookie cutter approach to packing as many people as you want to. When you do that, you kind of lose this sense of place that we're trying to develop here for this community. So looking at it, the non-sexy things is really need to focus on some of the critical issues of ADA compliance, some compaction issues, some erosion and some drainage issues. And then once you get that, you work on building this identity with signage, with branding that kind of transforms so the community knows that this is not the Corps of Engineers Park anymore. This is Clemson's park. And once you do that, then you can look at some of these big, bold initiatives and amenities that kind of make it into Clemson's community park. Kind of the crawl, walk, run approach, so that you're not overwhelmed with doing all these things, that you're slowly building this identity and this sense of place that's really, really special on Lake Hartwell. And it's a tremendous opportunity to take that next step to create Clemson's newest park. A lot of great things to do, a lot of exciting things. Enjoyed working with Tony, talking about some small operational things. The students give me a hard time because of the trash cans. First thing I saw when I went out there, I said, holy cow, everywhere you look, there's a trash can. And from an operational standpoint, you reduce those trash cans, it helps with labor, it helps with pests and critters and those kind of things. And it kind of starts that process of taking away that cookie cutter approach that the Corps of Engineers uses. And you'll be surprised at how the appearance of the park would be if you were to centralize those collection stations and not have a trash can every 5 feet. And everywhere you look, there's a trash can. It would save you money. And so operationally, Tony and I would talk a lot about some of the things that could start this process of changing, from this 1970s era Corps of Engineers property to something that could be really special for the city of Clemson. Thank you all for the opportunity for our class to be involved in this. We'll take any questions that you may have, and thank these students for being here tonight.
I do have a question, and this is a Tony question too, because he knows how much I like trees. What are some of the ways in a park that busy that we can keep the trees from being damaged? Because I see the soil compaction, and we have red clay already. So, are there things we can do to prevent that?
I think that she said it very well, is you need to remove what's compacting the soil around those trees, and that's lessen the activity around the trees.
If you're familiar with that little point that we're talking about there, it's an amazing piece of property. And everybody's with it. And it has erosion issues, drainage issues going out there, and then the Corps has kind of escalated the problem there because they put all their stuff with picnic tables and trash cans, and so everybody goes there, and it never gets a chance to recover because and so you can tell it by looking at those trees compared to other trees. They're not as healthy because of the compaction and erosion issues, and that area is so busy that it never gets a chance to recover from a busy season because the season is so long.
12 Mile is basically a bunch of parking lots in the woods.
Yeah.
But that point out there is so special, as they all observe, that if you could do something there, that would be a major impact on that park.
Questions, comments? That's good. You said it very
Good
well.
work on surviving.
Thank you.
Phil.
Great job. Thank you for the time and energy. Love
you
it.
all so much for
We
having me.
appreciate it. Appreciate you coming.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. come up and report on a community development grant opportunity to possibly purchase land, create
Thank
affordable
you.
housing.
Thank you. Staff has been working on a proposal to submit for potential funding for congressional directed funding, which came back to Congress last year after it had been banned since 2011. I've spoke with Senator Graham's staff, and last year, with being the first year back, they received over 100 applications, so they expect more this year. But staff has put their heads together and come up with a great project. The hope would be to acquire property, clean it up, and put the infrastructure for the potential for affordable housing. But it is due on Friday, and we just want to make you all aware of it, that it is a project that we're working on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. Now we'll go straight into staff reports. Andy.
All right, Conversations with Council is Thursday night, 6 p.m. at the fire station. Chief Campos is going to attend, and I believe we're also going to be discussing the Uber regulations and drop-off sites and how all that's working. The Land Conservation Trust Bank Board meeting will meet Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, so we're going to get an update then on the Orchard at Berkeley project. PCMA, 6 p.m. at Liberty High School next Monday. Please let Beverly know if you can attend that. We have our SCDOT quarterly meeting next Thursday at 10 a.m. Y'all can attend that if you want, or you can let us know if you've got any constituents passing along anything they want us to look into. Please forward that along to either myself or Nathan. And I need to get your calendars out and find a date for a work session where development strategies can present their draft illustrations of the preferred uptown concept. This will be their first attempt at 2D that they'll turn into a 3D conception. They've got May 10th, 11th, or 12th. You can do it in the middle of the day or at the end of the day, whichever is more convenient for y'all.
Dates again, May 10th.
10, 11, and 12.
Could we do a lunch meeting?
Sure.
I can do lunch or after work.
When is graduation? Is it the 11th, 12th? Yeah. 11th is the 40th.
I'm sorry, I don't know if there's one, it's the 12th and 13th.
12th and 13th.
I say Thursday and Friday
Thursday
usually.
and Friday. The hoodie is the
I don't have my reading list. It's too late to put them up there.
So I think we're coming back to the 11th. So let them
10th or 11th at lunch, is that what we're saying?
So that works for me.
What time you want to do it?
Lunch.
12?
I prefer the 11th if we're going to lunch. I have a meeting. I prefer the 11th if we're going to do that because I have
11.
11th?
May
May the
11th.
11th.
Oh, May 11th. Oh, yeah, okay. May 11th.
Okay.
Okay.
So Andy, let me ask a question before that meeting. So what will be the purpose? Can we submit questions for the development people to think of before that day?
I think that'd be a great idea. I mean, I've got a couple questions here that I know that y'all had questions about data validation and where it came from, where they're getting their market information, and then concerns about the link between the different types of development and the benefits they yield, like a cost benefit type of a scenario.
And the other thing, and I think I brought this up before, so more and more I'm hearing from the public and others in terms of the cost of the things we want to do in the city necessitate student-oriented housing and other things to cover that. I still don't have a good handle on what exactly it is we want to do for the city and how much that costs. I've heard some general ideas and some specific at Abernathy Park, but it would help to that list that you just had, have a sense about what is it that we want this money to do. I think Bob used the term trade-offs earlier on. What will be the trade-offs? But I've never actually seen the dollar or the projects that involves. So That might not be actually development strategies, that might be us to decide that, but I'd like to see that.
They have some slides prepared. From information they gathered from the workshop, and they have some kind of rough budget numbers, but we could probably drill down a little better.
Well, and more specifically, I guess, we're getting close to making some pretty important decisions. We're at a turning point, and so the more specificity they could give, at least to me, the more I think we're making informed decisions. But again, I don't know that that's all development strategies call, right? A lot of that's going to be our call.
Some of it might be us doing research, but if you guys want, this is on the 11th, if you could get any questions to me by, say, Wednesday the 4th, that would give me plenty of time to pass them along so they can work on those.
And did they ever get back to, I'd asked a question about comparable community developments with student housing in the middle of it that they could identify. And I think you sent us something from Orangeburg, or maybe they did. But if they could send us, if there are any other places where sort of the showpiece for a community is Anchor has a high-density student housing, I would like to see that. And if the answer is no, there is no such thing, we are cutting a new path, that's fine too. But if there is such a thing, it would help a lot.
Example of a project where it was a community destination and student housing
Was a large part of it. Right.
Part of that project.
Right. And student destination in the sense that the dream of this would be our Falls Park. Is there anywhere that has that? Like I say, you sent us Orangeburg, but I think that was only for a total of 5,000 students in both those colleges, and that's still in the planning stage too. But anyway, if
we just stumbled on that one. We were just reading through one of our municipal journals, and we saw it, and I said, hey, here's another community doing something.
yeah, it was similar in some, but anyway, that would help to get that if Matt.
Andy, get them to go look at North Shore, which is in Farragut, Tennessee.
What was that called?
North Shore, because they have a community situation very similar to what we'd like to see facing the lake, but it's, as expected, it had a residential component behind it, but it was, instead of it obviously was not student housing, but it was a massive, and I mean massive, apartment complex, but in 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments that, and the buildings were ranged in height from 2 to 4 stories. And it was a really, really, really nice complex. The rents on the apartments ranged from $1,600 for a 1 bedroom up to about $2,600 to $800 for a 3 bedroom. I guess my question would be to them, what's the revenue thrown off on that look like as compared, from a developer perspective, as it compares to the student housing piece? Because clearly the people in North Shore made it work.
I'll ask them to look into that.
It is really nice, very nice.
Those are all my staff reports.
Cool, thank you. Next is policy action agenda. If you'd like to call on 653-9886, do 2-minute limit per speaker. Again, 653-9886. First is to consider agreement between the City of Clemson, Clemson University for Fire Suppression Services, which shall be a 5-year term starting July 1st of this year. Andy, you want to add anything else? What Chief has already.
He's pretty much reiterated the whole thing. I'm shared with you the numbers. One thing I will add is that, part of the impact fee study we're looking for, we're going to be including a fire impact fee. And I'm hoping that that's going to take a lot of pressure off the hospitality fee fund for capital purchases like air tanks and fire trucks, like Chief was mentioning.
Questions for Andy or Chief? He's still here. Thank you for staying.
There's only one reading for this, right?
Yes, sir. So, no other questions, comments? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve an agreement between the City of Clemson and Clemson University for Fire Suppression Services for a 5-year term beginning July 1st, 2022, as presented.
Second.
Any other comments, discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right. Thank you also would like to commend Mike Nebeski also, who is very instrumental.
Yeah, he's a big help.
So we greatly appreciate his help at Clemson University as well. Next is consider a second amendment to the shared parking agreement for the Shepherd Hotel. Todd.
Good evening. If you recall, in 2019, when the Shepherd Hotel was going through their vetting process, that they proposed a shared parking agreement to meet their parking requirements for the hotel and for their restaurant space within the hotel. In the city of Clemson, in our C district, where this is located, the only parking requirements in the C district are for apartments and hotels. No other businesses have any required parking, but as a hotel they did, and they proposed a shared parking agreement, which is typically approved at staff level, but because of the unique nature of the arrangement and the valet parking concept, that I chose to bring this to council to include them in the process. And that was passed unanimously by council in 2019. Shortly thereafter, it was amended. There was some minor changes which also were approved. Subsequent to that, about 2 years later, about 6 months ago, that the hotel decided to avail themselves of their by right option to have a rooftop activity or entertainment area, and that they went through the BAR to get approval from to verify their heights and then other design aspects of that addition, and got approval from the BAR, and but as a result of that, it increased their meeting and event space in the hotel, and as a result of that, it increased their parking requirement. So as it stands, that the use, which is by right and had been approved by the BAR, has increased the parking necessary at the Astro site, and this the previously approved site plan for the Astro site had excess parking, had more parking than the hotel needed. And so the existing hotel site, the existing Astro site has all the required parking for the proposed restaurant, I think is called Walk-Ons, for the gym, and for the hotel. And the hotel has 3 components to its parking: the rooms, the restaurant, and then the events and meeting space up on top. The site at the Astro, which is the site has been approved by the BAR, provides actually in excess of the parking that's required for all the uses. But because that changed the agreement, that is sticking with the original intention and relationship between this agreement and council, that I chose to continue in the vein of having council be aware of and approve the amendment associated with the increase in numbers. So the only change before you from the hotel and the agreement is it just clarifies the amount of parking they have to maintain down there. Nothing else changes physically. It's just the assignation or the assigning of the parking spaces on that site. And that at the last time this was brought to council, that council requested of the Shepherd Hotel to address the matter of overflow parking, and that they have met with New Springs Church and worked out an agreement of how they will handle overflow parking. And with that, I will be happy to answer questions, and I believe that there are representatives from the Shepherd Hotel here or on the phone tonight to answer questions should you have any.
And I'm looking at this Astro drawing, I think. But my question is, the total spaces are 106 for the hotel, according to what I'm looking at.
Well, it's 106 before every place in the city that is adjacent to a cat line is subject to a 10% reduction at the discretion of the zoning administrator. We have never not given that reduction to anybody on the cat line. So that 106 drops down to 96 because of
Okay.
reduction.
Well, I'm just looking at this. Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. The 10
Yeah.
spaces for on-street parking, and then the cat. But I guess my question is, so whatever that number is, that includes your roof space?
Yes.
So essentially what you're saying here is that roof space is 75% of 1 per 100 square feet. So you got 3,300 square feet up there. So if you had an event, you're assuming that you only have to deal with 26 vehicles for that event.
Actually, that's not the way the ordinance is written to us. We don't make that assumption, that there are parking requirements that are based on a range of formulas, and so this is the formula that's been in place for probably 25 or 30 years for hotels and the event space, and that it doesn't necessarily determine how many people will be there. It just says this is historically what the anticipated average or required amount of parking would be for that particular use. And I think that in most cases, whether it's a restaurant or a doctor's office, that they anticipate ebbs and flow of vehicular needs, and that in the case of a hotel event space, that there's some overlap between the guests and the parking provided for them and people using the event space. Undoubtedly, in this case, I believe there will be situations where there'll be events on the roof that are not at all associated with guests at the hotel. But those are the standards from the city ordinance for the parking ratios.
What is the total number of spots at Astro?
113.
No, it's 100.
I think it's 120.
123.
123. And they
yeah.
need 114 total. So they actually had 9 more than they need.
But there's 96 needed for the hotel.
Are there?
So
Well, that'd be max.
somehow our ordinance has that 20 spaces is going to be enough for a gym plus a restaurant that's going to need a high level of turnover and a bunch of people there to make that restaurant work.
I think there's 96.
And there's more. If there's 23, we're actually they have
I think it's
27.
I think
27 spaces for a gym and a restaurant that is going to need a bunch of people and a high level of turnover to service that restaurant. In addition to when the hotel is maxed out.
Yeah. Again, I think there are 123 spaces,
And some of those spaces are in that decked deal for the hotel.
oh,
correct?
absolutely correct.
Okay.
That's resident spaces, I suspect.
There are 48 are in the stackers. They
And
have.
that's of the 123 total, though.
Correct.
Include
I
those
can't
decked
keep up with the
spaces.
response. I can't keep it up.
Yeah.
And so, in addition to that, there's on-street parking that the site gets credit for that, and it's yet to be seen what will
Our spaces in the, this is for the Shepherd Hotel folks back there. Our spaces at the Astro going to be clearly marked. These are hotel parking, these are for the gym, these are for the restaurant. Of those 27 you have left over, for the restaurant, and the gym? Are those gonna be clearly marked and
I'll let them answer.
in that parking lot?
It's not required by code, and that just like if you're
You
at,
said there's 114 total that they needed with the restaurant and the gym, so there's at least 18 parking spaces that they're required to have there for those two things, between the 114 you mentioned and the 96 that are for the hotel.
the way that the code is written and been applied, as long as I've been involved with the city, is that in a parking lot, that you don't, a developer or an owner is not required to stripe off who gets which spaces. It's designed on the collective need.
But we have a hotel that requires 96 spots. Therefore, those 96 spots need to be available to the hotel at all times through this special agreement that was approved. Therefore, if that, this whole situation is fraught with ways that this is going to be just like we talked. Lindsay's not here anymore. Just like we talked about with the 15-minute spaces downtown, this has disaster written all over it from that perspective. I like what you guys are doing. I love the look of the hotel. It's like my favorite building in downtown now. I like what y'all are trying to do. This additional stuff that started back in October, and coming back with this doesn't appear to be well thought out at all. So that's where my hesitation is about approving an amendment to an agreement at this point without getting to see this in operation to see if it's going to work as originally designed before making exceptions and amendments to this very special, a special situation. We don't have this happening anywhere else, right?
Have what happening?
A shared parking agreement for something of this scale.
It's the only one in the city. And I think the reason for that has been they've always fallen apart because at some point, the property owner who was giving up their parking was really putting themselves in a vulnerable position. In this case, it's the same owner.
Right.
And,
but there's a whole lot of competing interests going on here on that Astra site with the same owner, and I get it, but there's,
And to me, it's the perfect storm. There's about 12 or 14 weekends out of the year. You're talking about graduations, and you're talking about football, et cetera, et cetera. So, thus, walk-ons is going to be busy, and then the hotel is going to be busy, and it's likely that there's going to be a special event going on upstate on rooftop during all that. I think what's going to happen, and it's maybe a trial and error kind of situation, just going to have to see, but the non-residents coming to the hotel are going to be probably parking around town, particularly if it's a rooftop event. And I don't want us to see this become an ugly event between the hotel and the town and the city and everything else. My worry is, and I'm in Lutheran Church. Sunday mornings, there'll be people who will abuse the lots, abuse that hotel situation, and those vehicles will get towed on Sunday mornings. And so that starts happening, and it's going to be a black eye for you guys. And that's my only concern too. You're welcome to say whatever you want to. Yeah, come on.
First and foremost,
Come on up here.
Todd, switch.
Come on, Todd. We've got enough time.
So the count that y'all are using is we're trying to follow the ordinance as it relates to the math. There's 67 rooms in the hotel. And I think you had said, Bob, the count that the hotel needs, that also includes the restaurant seats where no other restaurant in the downtown area needs parking spaces. So if you actually subtract the restaurant count, it gets lower. So that gets put into the kitty.
I'm sorry, run that by me one more time.
So we have 67 rooms, and let's just say it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so we need 67 parking spaces for the hotel. But the number, I think it's, help me out, Todd, is it 80-something that the hotel needs because it's a hotel restaurant? There needs to be parking space that goes with it, but every restaurant to the left, to the right, and across the street doesn't need parking, but that's the way the ordinance reads. So those parking spaces are part of our count. And then the other thing about, and John, you bring up a really good point about the event, we would never take an event on a Sunday morning.
No, I'm talking about people that don't, they don't, this is what's gonna happen, I think. It's not gonna be people that are used, it's not gonna be the people that come here for the first or second time, because they're gonna obey the rules. It's gonna be the alumni that show up on these football weekends, and they may valet one time, but then they're gonna be out and about doing everything else, and they're gonna park the car wherever. That's the ones that's gonna get caught on Sunday mornings. That's all I'm saying. And it's not just Sunday mornings. I mean, if we were true to form on all this, we'd be towing cars, because there's no overnight parking anywhere in the city. But we don't really do that, but we could. And so that's all I'm saying. I don't want it to become, I'm pulling for you guys, I don't want it to become a bad situation. Bob doesn't either. But I know that this, I think you're going to find the community is really looking forward to walk-ons, and I think it'll be successful, not only for people living in town, but for people coming to visit town, particularly on big weekend kind of situations and all. So I question if you're not going to have a competition just in that lot based on your residents and maybe a few that maybe come to your restaurant. I think most of your restaurant people will probably park in the parking deck or wherever they can when they're there, depending on the time of day.
You bring up a lot of really good points. And the first thing I do want to reiterate is what I said the last meeting is our interests are aligned. If a guest is getting towed, if someone's visiting the hotel is getting towed, that doesn't look well on us. Doesn't look good on anybody. As it relates to, what you're speaking to now, we're kind of looking at the Astro lot versus what the hotel needs and the capacity there. During high volume periods, it will be a managed lot. We'll have a hotel representative down there because we're going to need somebody down there with respect to someone having to retrieve their car, whether it's in the parking stackers or whether it's parked someplace else. So whether we share that person between walk-ons and the gym, we can discuss that between ourselves operationally just to make sure that we don't have an infiltration of people just parking and walking to where they need to go to.
Do you possibly know the seating capacity? Might be more like tables. Do you happen to know the number of tables that are going to be in walk-on?
Not off the top of my head, but again, we're getting back to a lot of hypothetical versus what the ordinance reads, what we're trying to comply with, and then we do know there's going to be a piece of, okay, let's open it up and see what we have to manage. Like I said, the inherent built-in control here is the fact that we don't want to upset any of our guests, walk-ons, the gym, everyone is in the same boat to try to do the right thing and take care of it, make it seamless, even during these stress periods, I think, as you called it, the prior council meeting we attended.
So when will you use New Spring?
We will use New Spring when we feel that we're at capacity, meaning the hotel is going to be busy. We have an understanding as to what walk-ons capacity is, lunch, dinner, and a gym schedule. So we feel like that it's going to stress that parking space. We will work with the New Spring team, and then we will use the shuttle system that we're working on, that we would say to our event guests, go right to New Spring, and we're going to shuttle you in and out of the hotel.
Okay,
so we bypass that.
The people that will be pushed to New Spring
That is
will always
correct.
be an event.
In advance of the event. So, for example, if John Smith is planning an event, we would say to John Smith, on this day, we forecast that the parking is going to be tight. We ask that all guests go to the New Spring parking lot, and then we will shuttle those guests into the hotel and similar shuttle back.
I get that.
They're not going to go to New Spring and
Well, they might.
anyway. They're not
So
going to happen.
I don't know if this is a mistake, but in your letter to New Springs, you actually say New Springs' address is 1320 Clemson Boulevard, Seneca. Is that where they're parking in Seneca?
That is correct. It's
At New Spring right there.
It's right across the bridge.
It's a second, okay, but
It's
so that's where they-
in essence, aside from high-volume traffic in Clemson, it's a 5-minute.
So it's right over the bridge, is that?
Yes.
Correct.
Right there on
I
the
think-
left side.
I think the reality is, and I think it is, that traffic is going to be a mess on those weekends. I don't think there's any way to avoid that. I'm not sure if we have any control, any role. I just think that's the reality. I mean, maybe you'll revisit us next year and you'll say, it's such a mess, we're going to make some more accommodations because you've been working with the city. But I don't think there's any way that you pack more people in and somehow don't have more of a mess. I don't see that. I think it's going to happen. I think people will park where they want. I think there will be in different lots. And I think the other part is people who are used to parking, for instance, in the parking garage and other places now might find themselves displaced. And then they're going to have to find other places to go. And you're not going to shuttle people who are not staying at your hotel just because they have nowhere to park, I'm assuming. So it's not just the hotel. The spaces they take on the street or anywhere else, or parking garage, will displace other people who normally would park there who have nothing to do with your hotel. So I think the reality, like it or not, is on those days of graduation, home football, it's going to be a mess, particularly until maybe a rhythm will develop that will help that. But I don't know that we as council have any say in that part of it. Right?
I just think that we're going to have to, whatever it is, we are already in this deal. We're going to have to figure it out as we go. I don't think we can make a decision tonight that's going to be ironclad one way or the other. I think we'll have to revisit this, several times. I think we all want your deal to succeed. We want walk-ons to succeed. Obviously, we want all that to succeed, and we don't want parking to become an issue. So, I personally think, whatever we come up with, we move forward, and with the understanding that it will probably be revisited.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because if you think about it, to the numbers, to the ordinance, what Mr. Stedman presented, I mean, we still have capacity to the numbers. Then we get into the reality and then the operation, and that's where I think it's going to be. We're going to be the best planners possible, working with walk-ons, working with the gym, working with any special events, hotel occupancy. It'll be a kind of a triad of making sure that we're doing everything right to take care of our customers and guests, and then respond.
I think we're trying to fix a 5 or 10% event problem, max. I mean, what I'm saying is I think it would be less than 5 or 10% of the time that we got an issue. But it could be interesting, 5 or 10%.
Before, Catherine, you raised.
No, for Andy to nail on the head, the problem is going to be the restaurant and all that, because you're right, they've got more parking if the restaurant moved into another place downtown. I do think we need to revisit our ordinance, but that's a separate topic as far as maybe some allowances we may downtown. But the problem's going to be when you do have your rooftop events. I mean, you're going to have people displaced from downtown that there's not going to be parking people that are doing business all through downtown. And unfortunately, they're going to be up on the rooftop and not spreading the wealth, so to speak. And that is an unfortunate byproduct of this. So hopefully y'all find a way to be some good corporate citizens downtown. I think there's been some challenges at this point, so hopefully that will smooth itself out.
Yeah, your people need to become part of that group, the that group downtown. You need to have a representative there telling me.
Absolutely. We view that as a responsibility.
Yes, thank you. I would like to say that this goes back to this problem with Todd here, because as you said, you're doing it by the ordinance, which is what Todd has lived by. And then Todd says, guess what? This ordinance is 30 to 35 years old. We need to revisit that ordinance, like yesterday. I don't know the right process yet to have planning commission do that, Elaine. But if we are still giving discounts for a few spaces because they're on a cat bus line and discounts for whatever else the issues are, that presents an unrealistic picture. I would rather work from the worst picture and build solutions than now at the 11 and a half hour, hey, we're ready to open, we're asking for all of these exceptions, we want all of these new toys, then we're left to with an inability to do anything. And we can't magically add spaces. It would really look bad if we said, no, you can't do these things. And so we're left with no solution. So we really need to revisit whatever that parking ordinance is soon.
I think that's very fair, especially when you're dealing with possibly antiquated
Any ordinance that's
ordinances.
35 years old in Clemson is officially antiquated.
That said, though, there's so many factors nowadays that are hard to even take a look, like Uber, rideshare, food delivery. All of these things need to be factored into those. So what I guess we're asking today is, because again, 11th hour, as you said, we would like the approval to amend the parking services agreement, and then we will work with all parties involved, city, fire, police, walk-ons, everybody involved, to make sure that we do everything that we can in the downtown area to try to make it even better than what we have right now, despite the fact that we're dropping a hotel in where there was a bank. So
You just nailed hit the nail on the head. It's the 11th hour, and I've seen emails from back in October and November to you all saying that you all needed to come and get this done, and alerted you all to the need for the amended parking agreement. And it's now
The 11th hour.
it's now April. So that's another thing I'm struggling with, is why we're sitting here at after the mid of April, and we're having this conversation. Again, what I would like to actually look into is, if this becomes, I would like something in the agreement if we can do this. If this becomes a disaster area, because you are dropping a hotel that has a lot of different uses in it in the middle of downtown, and it's a special exception, that thus the shared parking use agreement. Hotels are supposed to have parking somewhere, and then you have these added pressures on top of it. I would feel a whole lot better about this if there's something in the agreement that in a year, if it has become an unmitigated disaster, there is going to be a remedy of some solution that we can work on to make it better. Because again, there's already parking pressures in downtown that we are hearing a whole lot about from a whole lot of businesses, and they're very concerned about what the impact of the hotel and these operations are going to be on their businesses, because again, it is a special situation. And you can't compare your restaurant to everyone else's restaurant because it's part of the hotel. Okay, it's not like the sub place or the bagel place next door or the place across the street. It is a different thing.
I think the issue is that there is another factor, and besides Uber and Lyft, that's the human factor, right? People looking for parking spaces are like gas in a box. They'll fill up any space available to them, and they'll find a way. And I think Bob's point's well taken. It's unpredictable what that human nature is going to be over the next year. I think people will find creative ways to park. So I agree. I think if there was some way to revisit this with a deadline or something else, because who knows? You actually could take good examples of unpredictable factors. But I think human nature and where people will go is totally unpredictable. And they may end up on a lane's front yard. Who knows? So I think some way to revisit this set. I mean, even the idea, I like your idea of some of the spaces near the walk-in actually being identified as your spaces, whatever that is. But I think the only way to make sure that the human factor is considered is come back and revisit this after we see how human beings.
we would have no objection to that. I like I said, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Ty Schaefer, I'm with Robinson Bradshaw. We represent the hotel. Before we go this route, I think we need to have a conversation about exactly what that looks like, because that's clearly outside of the ordinance and that's outside of the authority that the council has over this matter. So I do want to make sure we note this for the record, kind of given where we're going, respectfully. This really isn't a matter that should even be before council under your ordinance the way it's written. The approval's a ministerial approval if the code requirements are met, and we've been told by staff, confirmed that all those code requirements are met, so it should have been signed by the zoning and codes administrator under the way your ordinance is written. So my understanding, though, is that the last time that the hotel appeared before council, you all had recommended they go out and try to find some overflow parking solutions, which is an extra ordinance requirement. They did that in good faith and came back here with that as a way to address.
Actually, they came to the answer they didn't have.
I'm sorry?
Actually, they came in bad faith and told us they had it, and that group had not agreed to it, and that had been well known for several months. So just one. clarify that.
Well, I would disagree with the fact that that was in bad faith. I think that was a changed mind from the counterparty, and the record would reflect that.
I understand,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to be difficult on this thing either, but if it becomes a nightmare, we just can't suddenly go poof when we got new parking spots, okay? And they can't fix it themselves. It's not, to me, it's not as much to do with the ordinance as the real world. And so, I realize you've got a backup at New Springs. I understand that. But I'm not worried so much about that portion of it. But the reality of it is, you guys have got skin in the game down at the Astro, and you want it to be just as successful. But you're going to have conflicting things going on there, and one could very well impact the other, or vice versa. That's all I'm saying. As long as my view on this is that whatever the ordinance is, we're not going to necessarily change that. But at the end of the day, I think there needs to be an opportunity to revisit it every so often to make certain. But again, I go back and say this: we cannot create parking spots. You can't create parking spots. They are what they are. Loosely, we're already pregnant, okay? And so at the end of the day, we got to kind of work it out. I think we got to go see where it goes. Hopefully, it doesn't create a nightmare. I hope it does.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I don't want council to think I'm being disrespectful at all. We do need to preserve that argument, because under the ordinance, the way your ordinance is written, you're bound by the ordinance just the same way we are. This is a ministerial approval that should have already been done. We're certainly willing to listen to other options and try to work through them, but you're asking for things outside the ordinance when you do that.
I just wanted to stress that, again, maybe this is where we end, is our interests are aligned. We don't want to add more to the problem downtown. We can't create parking spaces, but there's always, one of the great things about hospitality people is we solve problems. We spend so much time taking care of other people, and parking at our hotel for an event, our community, is paramount to us. So all things considered, I do think that this is something where, John, if we have to go back and say, okay, let's revisit this after a full season, I think we revisit it, but we'll probably come together. We'll probably have solutions already on the table as to what we could do. So that's really our position. We would like to receive approval for this, and then you have our commitment as it relates to our corporate citizenship downtown as to how we address this issue and what we can do to either just take care of this newness to the downtown with all of these new added things of rideshare and everything that's happening. And if the council is going to revisit the ordinance, that's of course your prerogative to do so. But most importantly is our commitment to make this work for all involved, whether it's the neighboring churches, whatever that might be. And that's what
too, though, to be clear, though, my understanding is the city has made several accommodations to your hotel. And it's changed some requirements, it altered some requirements, it's lessened some requirements. So the city has been pretty generous in terms of allowing you to do things that were not exactly by code. And I don't think I'm wrong on that. So I think it's a little unfair at this point then to go behind an ordinance and say you have to follow the ordinance. We've been sort of partnering on this. So it kind of disturbs me that now the ordinance is cast in concrete, and there have been prior things that apparently have not been cast in concrete.
And we're very grateful for that. Please don't think for 1 second that that's being glassed over by any means.
Thank you.
And we want to, for example, the architecture. We appreciate the comment made that it's a beautiful building, but that's what we set out to do. So this is in cooperation with the city. This is in cooperation with the community, all involved. So, a little bit of a twist here as it relates to what we're asking for you, but again, all interests are aligned on something like this. And as I said, from day one, 2 years ago, that I'm the guy standing in the lobby. So I'm not about to upset anybody, whether it's a community, a local person, or whether it's a hotel guest, anybody. So that's one of the great things about hospitality people.
I think we kick this can down the road long enough.
The attorney made it clear we don't really have a choice.
I like it better before the attorney spoke, but I think we can agree to revisit it a year and just you're right, just want to be in your solutions for 6 months or whatever along the way. But to me, the emphasis on y'all being good corporate citizens and responsive to your neighbor, because I do feel like there's been some challenges to that on many levels at this point, and, but we all want everybody to be successful, so.
And we're ready to take those challenges on with eyes wide open.
So if we could
The only
move
thing,
this forward.
before we move forward real quick, because I've been very quiet, listening to all the comments, I think it's been very good feedback. I would actually encourage revisiting this at the end of football season, as opposed to a year.
Right, oh, yeah.
So we keep on saying a year. So just keep that in mind, that, because we're gonna see, the full story will be over those 7 football games.
Do we have to set a time? I mean, could we not, if we get into a real bind on this thing, could we not revisit it on call or something
Well, I
like
mean,
that?
I think you've expressed that you're willing to work with us, which you have, and we're gonna continue to do
Mr. Mayor, what's going to happen is we're probably going to learn real fast.
Oh, I agree.
Like
That first game.
the Louisiana game. So we're going to know fast. We've got great planners. The restaurant will be open by then. So all things considered, I think we're going to have our beta test. But I will tell you this, whatever we learn from the first game, we'll improve it on the second. Whatever we learn on the second, based upon what we change, will be better on the third. So by the 7th game, we should have this pretty well down pat.
Yo, I do not, like, I would hate to be you going into this right now, because you're in a tough spot with the parking. And I do, again, I like what y'all are doing. You need to talk to your council about getting up and threatening a council. Not a good move, by the way. So, might want to have that discussion.
All right.
Point well taken.
So, somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the Second Amendment to the shared parking agreement for the Shepherd Hotel.
Second.
Any further discussion, comments at this time? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Is that everyone? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Next is mayor council reports, comments, new business. I'm going to do mine very quickly. I got a chance to speak to the Clemson University Student Senate. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time. I'll just pass this around. These are the comments. Hopefully I represented our council to the best of my ability. A lot of times I would say this is comments from me, not from the full city council. So if you're seeing this, and y'all may have already seen some of this, but I think that was the 4th time I think I've been there. But obviously the engagement, there are a lot of Clemson University students that want to be engaged to help our city and our community. So we will continue to not only discuss, but also put that into action. So that's all I was going to say. Other comments?
Just